actually 4. Just make sure you don't shovel right underneath you. That would be silly, wouldn't it? Ah, okay, almost there. We're not picking up any of these blocks. Alright, we're gonna have to go down there to pick up the stuff we dropped. Alright, so I think the best way to do it probably would be just to walk to the end and then do the same thing backwards. Alright, so this might take a little while. Maybe I should stop recording this. It's not really interesting. Can I think of something? Maybe I can think of something interesting to say. Nope. I can't think of anything interesting to say. It's taken a little bit of time, this. I mean, it's more tedious than anything, like making all these circles. Like, just checking the design. You know, instead of just building it straight away and then just, you know, hoping that it's gonna work out. Actually, making the prototypes in dirt and then checking it just to see if it looks good or not. This takes a lot of time, you know. But this is how you... This is proper design, and I'm quite... I really wanna... You know, I'm aware that I'm not just building for myself. You know, I'm making these videos, and you know, as someone who's trained in architectural design, I want to set a good example, and I want to, you know, show how things are done properly. So I don't really want to take shortcuts and kind of, you know, do things the wrong way and then basically teach you guys bad habits. Because I feel like I have a responsibility, you know, as somebody who knows how to do it right. If I do it wrong, then it's like, you know, being a bad example for you guys. So we're gonna do this properly, which means if I'm gonna do this properly, I'm gonna have to test the other concept for this shape, which is the constant radius, which I keep talking about. That's the other concept, which means I guess I have to do that if I want to, you know, be true to my word and be a good example. Actually, I think I'll compromise a little bit. So instead of doing the other one on the diagonal, which is kind of difficult, I'll do the other one on the straight curve. So that one there that goes straight out and it's lined up with the squares in Minecraft. That would make it a lot easier to do. Okay, I think I'll do that. So because I did this, I decided to make this on the diagonal. I knew it was going to be more difficult. But I wanted to do the more difficult one to make sure that I can figure out the difficult one. Because I mean, if you figure out the easy one and then when you build it you don't actually realize, and then you find out, you know, that oh, I don't actually know how to do it on the difficult one. That's not good. So the point of testing is to figure out things. So I chose to figure out the difficult one here on the diagonal. Now I'm less confident about the other one, and so I'm going to compromise a little bit. So instead of spending a lot of time trying to... Oh good, I survived. So instead of spending a lot of time trying to figure out the diagonal for the other concept as well, I'm going to make the other concept on the straight curve, which should make it a lot easier to figure out. And yeah, and then we'll see what that shape looks like, and whether we like it or not, or whether it's even, you know, any noticeably different. It might not even be, you know, all that different. It might just kind of look the same from the ground and then not really matter. So you don't know, you don't really know until you test it out. Like some people, or I guess, you know, people who are not experienced or trained, or, you know, who haven't done this a lot, or maybe even some experienced people, I don't know. But some people, like, they convince themselves that they know. Like when they don't know something, they try to convince themselves that they know. And I guess it's to talk themselves out of doing the hard work, which is... It's not, you know, it's not surprising. I guess it's human nature. I mean, if you don't have to do as much work, why would you want to do more work for no reason, right? So you try to look for a reason to do less work, and that's not, you know, again, I don't blame people for doing that. But you know, if you want to make a good design, that's not really the way to do it, because you end up convincing yourself into doing something that's less than optimum, less than ideal, less than professional, or whatever it is you want to use, whatever word you want to use. It's just not as much work as you're supposed to be doing. And good work requires a lot of input, and you have to put the hard work in to get the results. Oh, how did I get into this topic? Anyway, so some people try to convince themselves they don't need to test, or they try to convince themselves, oh, I know I'm sure it'll be alright, like wishful thinking mostly. I'm sure things will work out, optimism. I'm sure things will be fine, or we'll be alright. But if you think like that, then things are not alright, then you're in trouble. Or or you kind of convince yourself, okay, this is good enough. I don't need to test other prototypes. I'm sure the other prototypes won't be as good, but you don't know until you try it. You're just telling yourself that to talk yourself out of doing the work of drowning. You're just telling yourself that to talk yourself out of doing the work, which is not really the right way to go about things. It's nighttime. This is bad. So I can barely see the cubes. I can still see a few dirt cubes, but I might be surrounded by creepers for all I know at this point. I think I got everything. I can't see in the water very well. There's kind of squid in the way, and it's nighttime. Okay, I just hope I've got all the dirt. I'm probably losing dirt as I go, which is not good because, as I said, we need all the dirt we can get. Sleeping in the open. This is not safe. Oh well, safe enough. Let me just take one last scan in the water to see if we've left any dirt behind. And then we go back up and continue. What's that squid doing? Buried in the sand? Alright, it looks clear. Might have left a few blocks behind, but too bad. Also need more shovel. Yeah, that's a pretty good shape. Look at that. Look at that shape. See, I kind of... It's difficult to explain. I kind of had an idea that this shape would work out, because the thing is, like, it's like from if you look straight down at it or straight up at it, it's a circle. But then the curve, it's steeper in the middle and less steep at the ends, right? So what it means is, when you take that and you cut the circle out of it straight down, you end up with a elongated circle, or which is like a leaf shape. So, and especially the top ones, eventually I think it will end up like a kind of like a sausage shape, where it's kind of like, at the ends it flattens out, and so then it's kind of shorter there, but then in the middle, where it kind of comes down very steeply, it'll end up being a long straight bit. So then if you combine that with this stumpier ends, you end up with like a long sausage shape. I don't know if that's a good thing, but in my mind, I'm trying to kind of visualize how these shapes kind of intersect each other, and then how you get, how it kind of turns out in the end. So in my mind, I had an idea that it would be good. But again, like, the shapes are so complex that you kind of have to test them. Kind of have to actually build them to be sure. Or maybe some people don't have to. Maybe some people are just really good at visualizing shapes or something. I don't know. But I'm not. So I know that, to be sure, I need to test it. And yeah, I mean, I might as well practice what I preach. Otherwise, I'll sound like a complete hypocrite. Because, anytime somebody asks me for advice, I tell them, hey, try it out. You never know until you try it out. So yeah, I'll practice what I preach, but I'll do it on the easier one. Just because I mean, on the one hand, I don't know. On the other hand, I have a hunch that I prefer this over the other concept. So I'm still gonna test it, but I'm not going to make as much of an effort to work out the whole thing. If it turns out the other one looks better, then I'll work it out, I'll still do it. but I just have a hunch that I like this better. Again, like this thing, it looks good from some angles, it looks less good from other angles. Like here it's a bit awkward. The combination of that curve and the circle, like from here, that looks a bit awkward. It feels like a little strange, that curve there. I don't know. Maybe like with a shape that's complex, you're not gonna get it, looking good from every side. Because it's a different curve. It looks like a different curve depending on where you stand. Because it's such a the shape itself is complex. So I guess we're always going to have some angles that don't work. As an architect or as any sort of designer, you want to, especially an architect, you think in 3 dimensions and you want to try and make a building work from all sides. Like if you're a painter, making a flat painting, you only look at it from one angle, right? You only look at the painting from one, you look at it from the front. But an architect, think about designs from multiple. That's not good. Whoa, hey, feather falling 4, guys, feather falling 4. It's worth the money. So yeah, like as an architect, you think about how a design works from multiple angles or from all angles. Like I guess if you're a sculptor, it's different from a painter. Like a painter, you only look at a painting from the front. You don't look at the painting from the side. It's a bit strange, right? But you look at a sculpture from the side. So as a sculptor, you have to think, from all angles as well. So I guess it's slightly more complicated because of that. Although of course, the painter would spend more time looking at the front and making the front work. The front of the painting work really well. Whereas I guess if the sculptor has the same amount of time, then you might focus on certain parts, but you still have to consider the whole thing. You still have to consider the whole thing in the round, as it were. And it's the same with architecture. Architecture, you can usually walk around the whole building, and so you have to kind of think about the sides. Some buildings, they don't think about the sides, and it's obvious when they don't. Like when you look at it at the front, it looks really good, and then you walk around the side of the building and it looks kind of weird. That happens. Oh, an iron bar. Haven't seen a zombie drop that in a while. Yeah, so some buildings are a bit strange when you walk around the side, which is funny. But what I'm trying to say is, like here, it seems like it folds up a little too sharply there. It seems, but it's just the angle of it. Like it's not. Like when you kind of look at the other part further back, it looks great. Like the curve looks right. I don't know, like it bends inwards and then it bends outwards at the same time. It's a complex shape. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's like every part of it is different. Like you walk somewhere else, it looks different. You walk into another place, and it looks different again. It's pretty amazing. Like the human mind has a way of making sense of what it sees. So like if you see a cube, you recognize it as a cube. No matter which angle you look at it from, your brain will just tell you, hey, that's a cube. Even if you look at it from an angle, the idea is, okay, it's at an angle, so everything is just kind of triangles, or right? It's not really squares or triangles and parallelograms and other shapes. There's no squares that you're actually seeing. But then your brain will interpret those lines and shapes and say, okay, that's a cube, but at an angle, right? And then the brain can do that for basic shapes. The brain cannot do that for shapes that are kind of weird, or shapes that are uncommon. So like a mountain, you might recognize a mountain. Things that you might have an evolutionary reason for recognizing, things like mountains and trees and animals and maybe even houses. But for this kind of strange curve, like this thing's up in the air, you don't really know what it is. It's this kind of alien UFO sort of like a shape thing that doesn't really. So with a thing that's kind of completely unfamiliar like this, the brain, like it doesn't automatically interpret that into a shape. Unlike if you saw a cube, you know it's a cube. because a cube is easy. But a curving thing like this, your brain doesn't know exactly what it is when it's this big and you can't see the whole thing, and you don't really recognize it. So it's got an interesting effect. Okay, let's just step back from this. Let's just step way back and see what this looks like. Also, is it nighttime again? Almost. Almost nighttime again. Alright, let's step back and just take a look at it. Also, I've been thinking about this here. Like, you know how there's a... maybe we should talk about this later. You know how this is kind of open area? So there's like a... I'm planning to put the road here, right? And the road is kind of in a ditch, but then the ditch ends, and then it opens out into a flatbed. We might actually be able to use that to our advantage. So you kind of come in through a tunnel, and then you kind of break out of the tunnel, and then you immediately see that right in front of you. Like, imagine if you're coming in along a minecart, which wouldn't really work because, you know, the chunks take so long to load. But, you know, imagine for a moment that the chunks aren't a problem. You kind of come, you know, you're in this tunnel, you can't really see very much around you, and then you kind of break out of the tunnel, and then immediately in front of you, there's this giant tower thing, there's this giant rose thing, or the, you know, the desert rose thing. So maybe that can be used to our advantage. You know, to create this kind of high impact moment as you exit the tunnel, like there, and you see this kind of thing laid out before you. So the you know, when you're in the the tunnel kind of makes you, you know, makes you feel like, oh, this is kind of boring. I'm not like you're not distracted by other things. You're kind of just looking at the end of the tunnel, right? Because there's nothing else to look at. So then it really kind of focuses your attention on this thing that's coming up. So we might be able to use that. Anyway, back to this. So the shape of that thing is it's higher, it's steeper than I first imagined. Like, when I first imagined to be a more shallow dish than that. But maybe that's fine. Maybe that's, I mean, I feel like I put in too much work to change it now. How do you guys feel about that shape? It's definitely a petal-like shape. It's definitely, I mean, we're talking about flowers and you know, as an inspiration for this giant glass tower thing. So it's definitely a plant-like shape or a flower-like shape. It's quite impressive. You know, just doing that in Minecraft.